Kita mulai, Bu. Kalam, di kamera kalam. Mulai aja. Welcome to the opening of the International Seminar on Geography Education Study Program, University of PGRI Sumatera Barat, Monday, December 6, 2021.
Selamat datang dalam acara pembukaan Seminar Internasional 2021, Program Studi Pendidikan Geografi, Universitas PGRI Sumatera Barat, Senin 6 Desember 2021. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Praise and gratitude for the presence of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, for the abundance of His grace and gifts, so that we can carry out the International Seminar on the Geography Education Study Program with the theme, Geographic Actualization, the position and role of geography to achieve Golden Indonesia 2045 during the COVID-19 pandemic. We don't forget to send salawat and salam to our Lord, namely Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who had brought us to the path of light and left the darkness in this life by pronouncing Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad.
Disiarkan secara langsung melalui platform Zoom Meeting Universitas PGRI Sumatera Barat. Inilah pembukaan Seminar Internasional 2021, Program Studi Pendidikan Geografi, dengan tema Posisi dan Peran Ilmu Geografi dalam menghadapi Indonesia Emas 2045 di masa pandemi COVID-19.
The Honorable, the Head Board of Trustee of University of PGRI Sumatera Barat, Bapak Dr. Dasrizal MP.
Yang terhormat, Ketua Badan Pelaksana Harian Universitas PGRI Sumatera Barat, Bapak Dr. Dasrizal MP.
Profesor Dr. Ansofino MSI as Rector of University PGRI Sumatera Barat.
Rektor Universitas PGRI Sumatera Barat, Bapak Profesor Dr. Ansofino MSI.
Ibu Sri Imelwati PhD, Vice Rector for Academic Affairs.
Wakil Rektor Bidang Akademik, Ibu Sri Imelwati PhD.
Ibu Liza Husnita MPD, Vice Rector for Finance and General Administration Affairs.
Wakil Rektor Bidang Administrasi Umum dan Keuangan, Ibu Liza Husnita MPD.
Bapak Jarudin MA PhD, Vice Rector for the Students, Alumni and Cooperation Affairs.
Wakil Rektor Bidang Kemahasiswaan, Alumni dan Kerjasama, Bapak Jarudin MA PhD.
The Head of Geography Education Study Program, Ibu Erna Juwita SPD MSI.
Ketua Program Studi Pendidikan Geografi, Ibu Erna Juwita SPD MSI.
Secretary of the Geography Education Study Program and the Head of Committee of the Conference, Ibu Elvi Zuriani, MSI.
Sekretaris Program Studi Pendidikan Geografi, sekaligus Ketua Pelaksana Seminar Internasional, Ibu Elvi Zuriani, MSI.
The lecturers at University of PGRI Sumatera Barat.
Bapak Ibu dosen selingkungan Universitas PGRI Sumatera Barat.
The organizing committee for International Seminar on Geography Education Study Program.
Bapak Ibu panitia penyelenggara seminar internasional program studi pendidikan geografi.
The honorable keynote speakers for the conference today, Bapak Dr. Muhammad Dimyati, MSI, Chairman of Indonesian Geography Association.
Yang kami hormati para narasumber seminar internasional pada hari ini, Ketua Umum Ikatan Geografi Indonesia, Bapak Dr. Muhammad Dimyati, MSI.
Ibu Erna Juwita, SPD, MSI, Department of Geography, University of PGRI Sumatera Barat, Indonesia.
Program Studi Pendidikan Geografi Universitas PGRI Sumatera Barat, Indonesia, Ibu Erna Juwita, SPD, MSI.
Associate Professor Dr. Muhammad Hairi Ibrahim, University Pendidikan Sultan Idris, Malaysia.
Universitas Pendidikan Sultan Idris, Malaysia, Associate Professor Dr. Muhammad Hairi Ibrahim.
Professor Dr. Tim Bonnell, Department of Geography, National University of Singapore.
Program Studi Geografi Universitas Nasional Singapura, Profesor Dr. Tim Bonnell.
Associate Professor Dr. Ahsanullah, the Faculty of Art and Social Sciences, University Brunei Darussalam.
Fakultas Ilmu Sosial Universitas Brunei Darussalam, Associate Profesor Dr. Ahsanullah.
Distinguished participants and the presenters of the conference today.
Yang teristimewa peserta seminar internasional Program Studi Pendidikan Geografi tahun 2021.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next program is Minangkabau Tribe Welcoming Dance, Tari Pasambahan.
Bapak Ibu yang kami hormati, inilah Tari Pasambahan.
Ladies and gentlemen, Indonesian National Anthem, Indonesia Raya.
Lagu Indonesia Raya. Hadirin dimohon berdiri. Hadirin disilakan duduk kembali.
Praying that will be delivered by Bapak Zulhandra Koto MA.
Pembacaan doa Bapak Zulhandra Koto MA.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A'udzu billahi minasyaitonir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Allahumma ighfir lana dhunubana wa li abaina wa li ummahatina wa li ustazina wa li ikhwanina alladhina sabaquna bil iman wa la taj'al fi qulubina ghillan lil ladzina amanu rabbana innaka ra'ufur rahim. Ya Allah, ampunilah dosa-dosa kami, dosa bapak-bapak kami, dan ibu kami, dan saudara-saudara kami, dan guru-guru kami, dan orang-orang yang telah berbuat baik kepada kami. Ya Allah, Ya Aziz, Ya Ghaffar, di pagi ini, Senin 6 Desember 2021, bertepatan 3 Jumadil Awal 1443 Hijrah. Universitas PGRI Sumatera Barat sekaligus dikhususkan Seminar Internasional Prodi Geografi sebagai bahagian dari bentuk kesyukuran dan keridhaan-Mu ya Allah. Berikanlah kepada kami petunjuk dan ridha-Mu. Ya Allah, Ya Aziz, Ya Ghaffar. Allahumma ja'alna Qur'ana lana. Allahumma nawwir qulubana bil Qur'an wa zayyin akhlaqana bil Qur'an wa najjina minan nari bil Qur'an wa adkhilnal jannata bil Qur'an. Ya Allah, Ya Arhamar Rahimin, berikanlah dan bukakanlah kepada kami agar kami mampu membumikan Al-Quran di perguruan tinggi yang memberikan satu solusi, mencerahkan, mencerdaskan kehidupan anak bangsa di masa nanti. Jadikanlah Quran sebagai sumber prinsip, sinarilah hati kami dengan Al-Quran, hiasilah akhlak kami dengan Al-Quran, jauhkanlah kami dari neraka disebabkan Al-Quran, dan masukkanlah kami ya Allah kepada surgamu dengan Al-Quran. Maka untuk itu, dari seminar internasional Prodi Geografi ini memberikan satu solusi kehidupan lebih baik, bahwa geografi berperan untuk menuju Indonesia emas di masa depan. Dalam kepemimpinan yang luar biasa, berikanlah hati kami hati yang Engkau ridai, amal kami amal yang Engkau ridai, dan hasil yang kami peroleh juga Engkau berkahi. Rabbana taqabbal minna innaka antas samiul alim wa tub alaina innaka antat tawwabur rahim. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina azabannar. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun alal mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next one is the report by the head of committee of the conference, Ibu Elvi Zuriani, MSI.
Laporan Ketua Pelaksana, Ibu Elvi Zuriani, MSI.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi. Good morning. First of all, we would like to express our gratitude to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala for blessing joining into the international conference held by Geography Education Study Program of University PGRI Sumatera Barat. This is the second conference from geography, and thank you for Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as our prophet. Because of his struggle, now we are walking on the right now way. The Honorable Board of Trustees and Members, Dr. Dasrizal MP, the highest respect of University PGRI Sumatera Barat, Profesor Dr. Ansofino MSI, Vice Rector for Academic Affairs, Ibu Sri Imelwati PhD, Vice Rector for Finance and General Administration Affairs, Ibu Liza Husnita MPD, Vice Rector for Student, Alumni and Cooperation, Bapak Jarudin PhD. And also thank for Head of Geography Education Study Program, Ibu Erna Juwita, SPD MSI. And highest recognition goes to our keynote speaker, Dr. Muhammad Dimyati MSI, as the General Chairman of Geography Association from Mathematics and Science, Faculty of University Indonesia, who is ready to be with us here. Professor Muhammad Ibrahim from University Pendidikan Sultan Idris UPSI Malaysia, Professor Dr. Tim Bunel from National University of Singapore, Asok Professor Dr. Ahsan Ullah from University Brunei Darussalam, and Dr. Kandidat Erna Juwita SPD MSI from University PGRI Sumatera Barat. Next, also thanks to our presenter, participant, and committee for the conference. Welcome to our second Geography International Conference. The theme of this international conference is Geographic Actualization, the position and role of geography to achieve Golden Indonesia 2045 during the COVID-19 pandemic. The presenter of this conference are from lecturer and student, where there are 39 presenters and 157 participants. The article will be published in Proceeding Index by IPS Scopus. This seminar activity has been planned and prepared since August 2020, with the purpose are to prepare a strategic plan for the actualization of geography in relation to the vision of Golden Indonesia 2045. To implementation of research and development of scientific geography in line with the vision of Golden Indonesia 2045. The conference is divided to sessions, where the first session is the presentation from the keynote speaker, and after that there will be a parallel session from the presenter. At least we thank to Universitas PGRI Sumatera Barat for supporting this event. We also thank to all the committee, presenter, and participant of the conference. We apologize if there are shortcoming or mistake to implementation of this conference. See you another occasion. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, now with a great honor, we would like to invite the Vice Rector of Academic Affairs of University PGRI Sumatera Barat to deliver a welcoming speech and to open this conference officially, Ibu Sri Imelwati, PhD.
Sambutan Rektor Universitas PGRI Sumatera Barat sekaligus membuka secara resmi acara Seminar Internasional Program Studi Pendidikan Geografi yang diwakili oleh Wakil Rektor Bidang Akademik Ibu Sri Imelwati, PhD.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to express apology from our rector that Professor Dr. Ansovino could not coming to this conference as he is currently under doing something that he cannot leave at the moment. So on behalf of the Rector, University of PGRI Sumatera Barat, so I would like to congratulate Geography Department, Education Department for holding this event. First of all, I would like to say hello to our keynote speaker, Honorable Dr. Muhammad Dimyati. Selamat pagi, Bapak. Selamat
Selamat pagi.
Selamat pagi. Sehat Pak?
Alhamdulillah Ibu, semoga semua sehat. Amin.
Alhamdulillah sehat Pak. Thank you very much Bapak for having your time here. As we know that you are probably very busy at the moment.
You're welcome.
And the next Professor Dr. Muhammad Heri Ibrahim. Hello Professor, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Okay, once again, thank you very much for having this conference and sharing your idea and thought to everyone here. And the next Professor Dr. Tim Badal from Singapore. Hello, Professor. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. So hope everyone's safe there, even though we are still having a pandemic. At the moment in Sumatra, currently the number of the patient of the COVID has been decreased, but we are very cautious about the another incoming virus, which is currently under research, and also Ibu Erna Juwita, thank you for organizing this conference and also becoming the keynote speaker in this conference. And as we know that in our campus, we are very supportive in academic atmosphere by having international conference. Previously, we have been holding a conference on language and other subject, and now the topics is about geography, and we really appreciate this this activity. And to all of the keynote speaker, of course, we would like to invite you for the future cooperation, as we are also having a research under the topic of geography and geography education. And hopefully all of the keynote speakers are able to support and also becoming our reviewer and our research collaborator. And of course, and we hope that we will have a joint paper publication in the future. As we know that geography education department is one of the department in University of PGRI Sumatera Barat, and we have enthusiastic student and lecturer that will follow the regulation of the Indonesian Ministry of Education. And at the moment, the Ministry of Education has been asked the university to support the emancipated learning, Kampus Merdeka, Merdeka Belajar. So in this moment, I would like to encourage the participant of this conference to support and to join the program that has been introduced to our university so far. Now, again, we hope that this event will be succeed, and after this conference, we would like to have the paper, the publication that will be indexed in proceeding index. And then also, we hope that everyone participate in this conference will have a new insight of the current situation and the position of geography in our life. Once again, thank you very much for our keynote speaker, and we hope that in the near future, all of you can come to Padang in West Sumatra. So we are not only doing this online session, and we hope that we have face-to-face session. Once again, thank you very much, and kepada Prodi Pendidikan Geografi, selamat, dan mudah-mudahan acara ini sukses sampai selesai. And I think that's all that I can express in this opening remark. And once again, I would like to officially open the Geography International Conference, University of PGRI Sumatera Barat. And yeah, so good luck everyone, and thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Well, thank you so much for the Vice Director for Academic Affairs. And the next one is we come quite a bit relaxed because we are going to have taking a picture together as documentation. And we do hope all the participants who are joining through Zoom meeting today, please activate your video or camera, since we want to have taking picture together as documentation and have your very good smile. Please keep smiling at home, everyone there.
Bapak Ibu hadirin yang kami hormati, selanjutnya sesi foto bersama. Kami mohon kepada peserta seminar untuk mengaktifkan kamera.
Kita mulai dari slide 1, slide 1, Ibu Bapak. Okay. Tim IT kita. Lanjut, slide 2. Iya. Next, slide 3. Ayo pasang senyumnya yang paling indah. Okay. The next. Alright. Masih berada di slide 3 di monitor kita, layar monitor kita. Next one is slide 4. Okay. Slide 4 banyak yang nggak aktif ini kayaknya. Oke, slide 1 sudah nampak. Oke. Terima kasih. Sudah? Oke. Baik, ladies and gentlemen. Finally, we apologize for all shortcomings in presenting this opening ceremony of the conference today. And thank you so much for your kind attention.
Demikianlah acara pembukaan seminar internasional Program Studi Pendidikan Geografi Universitas PGRI Sumatera Barat. Terima kasih atas perhatian. Mohon maaf atas kekurangan.
Kita break sebentar karena sesaat lagi kita akan masuk kepada sesi inti, yaitu pemaparan materi dari keynote speaker kita. Kita break lebih kurang 5 menit.
Thank you.
Agar bersiap-siap, Bapak Moderator. Langsung aja lah, Nak. Well, ladies and gentlemen, now we come the core points of the conference today, that is the presentation by the keynote speakers. Here we have 5 keynote speakers, and the first one is Bapak Dr. Muhammad Dimyati MSI, General Chairman of Geography Association, Universitas Indonesia.
Bapak Ibu hadirin yang kami hormati, selanjutnya sesi pemaparan materi. Materi pertama oleh Bapak Dr. Muhammad Dimyati MSI, Ketua Umum Ikatan Geografi Indonesia.
The next presentation will be Associate Professor Dr. Muhammad Hairi Ibrahim from University Pendidikan Sultan Idris, Malaysia.
Materi kedua oleh Bapak Asosiat Profesor Dr. Muhammad Hairi Ibrahim, Universitas Pendidikan Sultan Idris, Malaysia.
The next one is Professor Dr. Tim Bunnell, Department of Geography, National University of Singapore.
Materi selanjutnya oleh Bapak Profesor Dr. Tim Bunnell, Program Studi Geografi Universitas Nasional Singapura.
And then Associate Professor Dr. Ahsanullah, the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, University Brunei Darussalam.
Selanjutnya, Asosiat Profesor Dr. Ahsanullah, Fakultas Ilmu Sosial Universitas Brunei Darussalam.
And the last presenter will be Ibu Dr. Candidate Erna Juwita, SPD MSI, Universitas PGRI Sumatera Barat, Indonesia.
Selanjutnya, Ibu Erna Juwita, SPD MSI, Universitas PGRI Sumatera Barat, Indonesia.
So this session will be moderated by Bapak Edward Kemal Emhum.
Pemaparan materi akan dimoderatori oleh Bapak Edward Kemal Emhum. Kepada Bapak, disilakan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to the second Geography International Conference with the theme Geographic Actualization, the position and role of geography to achieve Golden Indonesia 2045 during the COVID-19 pandemic. Dated Monday, December 6, 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you with our talented and inspiring keynote speakers. First is Dr. Muhammad Dimyati, MSc, General Chairman of Indonesian Geography Association from University of Indonesia. Good morning, Doctor.
Morning, Mas.
Second keynote speaker is Associate Professor Dr. Muhammad Hairi Ibrahim from University Pendidikan Sultan Idris, Malaysia. Good morning, Professor. The third keynote speaker is Professor Dr. Tim Bonner from National University of Singapore. Good morning, Professor. Then the fourth keynote speaker is Associate Professor Dr. Ahsan Ullah from University of Brunei Darussalam. Good morning, Professor. Okay, then the last keynote speaker is Dr. Candidate Erna Juwita from University PGRI Sumatera Barat, Indonesia. Okay, so I will also explain a bit about the rules of our presentation or conference for today. The first one is each of the keynote speaker will deliver the presentation 30 minutes for maximum. Then for the participant who want to give question, you can do it in the chat box or raise hand after the presentation is finished for all the keynote speakers. Okay, so we come to our first keynote speaker, Dr. Muhammad Dimyati, MSc. Okay, I will try to highlight a bit about the curriculum vitae from Dr. Muhammad Dimyati, MSc. He is the General Chairman of Indonesian Geography Association from University of Indonesia. Place of birth, Solo, Indonesia. Then his affiliation is University of Indonesia, Faculty of Mathematics and Natural Science, Department of Geography. Then his bachelor degree from Faculty of Geography, Gajah Mada University, Yogyakarta, Indonesia, graduated in 1982. His master degree of Agriculture Science from Division of Regional Planning, Faculty of Agriculture, Kyoto, University, Japan, graduated 1990. Then his doctoral degree, Agricultural Science from Division of Regional Planning, Faculty of Agriculture, Kyoto, University, Japan, and graduated 1997. Talking about the professional experience, Dr. Muhammad Dimyati has so many personal experiences, but there are some most outstanding experiences, such as Director General of Strengthening for Research and Development, Ministry of Research, Technology and Higher Education in 2015 until 2020. Then Deputy Minister of Science and Technology Resources, Ministry of Research and Technology, Indonesia, 2011 until 2014. Then Deputy Minister of Strengthening Research Development, Ministry of Research, Technology and Innovation Agency, Indonesia, 2020-2021. Then his research interests, first is remote sensing and geographic information system. Second is urban regional planning, disaster mitigation. Then number 4, land use, forest, and environmental management, and spatial public policy. Then, of course, there are so many publications, selected publication indexed by Scopus. So I think we need hear more from Dr. Muhammad Dimyati to share about his best practice and experience. For Dr. Muhammad Dimyati, MSc, time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, moderator.
You're welcome.
Can you hear my voice and can you see my slides?
Yes, very clear.
Okay, thank you very much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good morning. Peace be with you always. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Pagi-pagi makan cake almond sambil minum coffee essence. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Semoga sukses ini conference. Honorable Professor Dr. Ansufino, Rector of Universitas PGRI Sumatera Barat, this morning represented by Vice Rectors, invited speakers, distinguished guests, conference participants, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let us express our best gratitude to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala for His graciousness and His mercies. We can all gathered here in this webinar to attend the second Geography International Conference. This event is organized by Study Program of Geography, Universitas PGRI Sumatera Barat, in collaboration with Indonesian Geographical Association, OIG, and others partners. Universitas PGRI Sumatera Barat is one of the well-known as a university in West Indonesia who have study program geography. For this reason, as President of IGI, we thank to Chancellor Universitas PGRI Sumatera Barat through Pak Rektor or Bu Wakil Rektor for his excellent cooperation. Delighted ladies and gentlemen, this conference is an arena for Indonesian researchers, particularly geographers in the Universitas PGRI Sumatera Barat and surroundings, to show their capacities and openness to hold partnership to the world. I invite all participants at this conference to share, discuss, and exchange knowledge to find the solutions how to enhance the prosperity of our community. With that enthusiastic spirit, the Indonesian Geographical Association, or IGI, have continuously encouraged supportive collaboration among researchers in the field of geography in collaborating research among faculties or departments or study programs. By facilitating those two parties, the research spirit and the research output hopefully can be optimized to speed up the development and prosperity of the people. As the president of IGI, allow me to report to you all. First, IGI is a national non-governmental association of professionals, scientists, and educators devoted to the development of the discipline and practical implementation of geography. IGI was established in Jakarta in 1967, aiming to promote and develop the science and education of geography and the profession of geographer to positively contribute to the development of the nation of Indonesia. Geographer members has a wide range of careers as a community college instructors, state and local government employees, planners, cartographers, scientists, non-profit workers, entrepreneurs, business people, elementary and secondary educators, graduate students, retirees, university administrators, and so on from all over the Indonesia. IGI also has special or honorary member from overseas and other disciplines to enrich the knowledge, experience, and network expansion among the members. Most of state university in Indonesia have geography field as their study program or department. All of those has representatives of IGI members. Each has strong collaboration with local government, some with international partner. As you can see here, this is the distribution of study program of geography all over the islands. IGI has cooperation with several institutions, such as we have collaboration with Pertamina and other state companies here, and also with PT Makassar Satellite Technology, and also with ministries or institutions and other industries in Indonesia. Talking about the position of geographer in Indonesia, as president of IGI, would like to remind all of us that as geographers who were born and raised in Indonesia, we have to be able to make a significant contribution to various disaster problems in the country, which is characterized by many events and many kinds of disasters. A geographer, as a professional whose position has been strengthened by Government Regulation number 45, 2021 on geospatial information, and has the characteristic of being able to apply a spatial, environmental, and regional approach, must be able to contribute significantly in building the beloved Republic. One of the concrete efforts that must be put forward by geographers is at least being able to identify and analyze, as well as provide recommendation on technological techniques and also policy recommendations on the occurrence of disasters in Indonesia. As a professional organization whose position has been mentioned and recognized by the state, a geographer must be able to show that geographer is a useful human being and contributes significantly in our beloved country, Indonesia. Not just exist and be in Indonesia and only participate or play a role as it is. Geographers definitely can do it. I'm sure of it. Talking about Indonesia Vision 2045, we have to underline SDGs, I think. The SDGs has become a reference for various countries in development, including Indonesia, of course. Everyone has to be lifted from poverty. Or in other words, I can say everyone must be lifted from poverty. No one left behind in enjoying the fruits of development. Of the 17 SDGs goals, many aspects can be played by geography and geographer, such as clean water and sanitation as goal number 6, or city and community sustainability, goal number 11, or action on climate, goal number 13, life under the sea, goal number 14, and life on land, goal number 15, and others goals of SDGs. Vision Indonesia 2045 is ideal for Indonesia to become a sovereign, just, and prosperous country on the 100th anniversary, which falls in 2045. The President is optimistic that Indonesia will become the 4th or 5th largest economy in the world in 2045. Of course, we hope and work hard so that the COVID-19 pandemic, which has not ended after almost 2 years, will not affect the success of 2045 that we want to achieve. Technology is dynamically developed, bringing change in all areas of development and people's lives. Activity or work that is routine, manual, and cognitive will be reduced. Technological advancement are leveraged to minimize disruption. Electronic commerce will replace conventional trading. Industry 4.0 integrates cyber and artificial intelligence-based virtual production processes. Blockchains, a combination of artificial intelligence, big data, and IoT, are able to verify real-time financial transactions so that no third party is needed. And genetic engineering improves quality of lives. Ladies and gentlemen, we will move to follow the 4 pillars of development, namely the first, toward superior Indonesian people, culture, and mastering science and technology. The second one, pursuing an advanced and sustainable economic position. And the third, creating equitable and inclusive development. And the last one, striving to become a democratic, strong, and clean country. In the future, the demands of the public sector will be more transparent. The public will demand smart government, open government, big data-driven policy, and cultural shifting. For that, we have to prepare our habits, attitudes, and if necessary, a paradigm in communicating and serving the community from now on. Inevitably, we have to consider change in the strategic environment that have led not only to an information society, but already in the era of super smart society, or what we often know as Society 5.0, where in Europe, it is known as the Industrial Revolution 4.0. In China, it is marked by the spirit of Made in China in 2025. In Asia, it is marked by the smart city era. And in Japan, it is marked by the emergence of Society 5.0 era. And in North America, the internet industry is born. Thus, the role of IoT, artificial intelligence, robotics, big data, and blockchain must be a careful calculation in building the nation's civilization. On the other hand, the position of geographer has strengthened, especially in terms of state recognition of geographical position in regulations. But the fact is that geography lessons at the elementary and secondary education level are concerning, because now it is as 1 in 4 elective taught in school. So there is a possibility that geography subject will be eliminated, especially when the school does not have a geography teacher. You can imagine in the past, when geography was compulsory at the elementary and secondary education level, we were still worried because there are still many young people in Indonesia, a country full of natural disaster, whose disaster literacy is low because they don't get geography subjects that are strictly related with disaster aspect. Now, the situation will be even more worrying because more and more young people of the millennial generation do not know the geography of Indonesia, and they do not know the everywhere in Indonesia is very prone to disasters. So the possibility of becoming victims will increase for the younger generation of Indonesia. For that, we strive to be more strategic. For example, by providing input to curriculum makers or policy makers for primary and secondary education. And we ask them to one more evaluate the existing curriculum to return geography subject to be mandatory again. In the other hand, we also want to make geography standard books, or we can say buku babon or white book. The book can be used by the whole community, both teachers, students, writers, and other interested parties in the study of geography. The standard book or white book will at least contain matters relating to, first, philosophy of geography, which is expected to be able to formulate aspects of geographical ontology, geographical epistemology, and geographic axiology in the right sense. The second, the essence of geography, which is expected to contain the right definition of geography, geographic objects, principle of geography, approach and concept of geography. And the third, the essential element of geography will describe place and location, space and region, scale and change, environment and society, and movement and sustainability. And the fourth one, geographical competence, both personal and social competence for geographers. The book is expected to be understood consciously and deeply by all members of the geographic community, which marks the beginning of our awakening to move forward together to achieve mutual success. Delighted ladies and gentlemen, as the president of IGI, I also would like to welcome and thanks to you all, especially to the rector of Universitas PGRI Sumatera Barat and other distinguished guests, invited speakers for your participation in this conference. Hopefully, this conference will give positive impact and benefit for IGI and all members to participate more and more in the real contribution for the world society and for the nation development. Please remind that the people or public do not wait for the debate's result, but they are waiting the benefit of our research or our product to improve their lives. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the God Almighty, give us his blessing and guidance. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Burung irian, burung cendrawasih. Cukup sekian, terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. That is a very nice proverb, Doctor. I will try to review a bit. So, Dr. Dimyati talk about IGI. It is a national non-governmental association. It is to improve the knowledge, experience, and cooperation of geographer community in 2045. The motto is "No one left behind" on sustainable development goals, and it is expected that Indonesia becomes the 4th or 5th largest economy in the world 2045. Then the last of his speech, Dr. want to say that geography should produce the product for improving the life. So this is very good presentation. As long as right now we know that there are so many products that we need to show to our community so that our sustainable development goals can be achieved together. Thank you, Dr. Okay, big applause to Dr. Dimyati. Then we go on to the second keynote speaker is Associate Professor Dr. Muhammad Hairi Ibrahim from University Pendidikan Sultan Idris, Malaysia. Okay, for Doctor, I will try to highlight a bit your CV. So, Professor Dr. Muhammad Hairi Ibrahim is nationality from
thank you.
Malaysia. Then department is Faculty of Human Sciences. Then academic qualification, his Doctor of Philosophy degree, Urban Climate, University Kebangsaan Malaysia 2014. Then master degree in Environmental Management, University Kebangsaan Malaysia 2001. Then his bachelor degree of Arts Geography, University Malaya 1998. Then there are so many personal affiliation from the professor. Then such as Association Academic Operational of Anak Perak Malaysia member 2016 until 2026. Then Environmental Management Society EMS of Malaysia committee member 2010 until 2011. Then there's so many actually we can hear later from the Professor Hairi. Then related to the field specialization, his focus is on geography and environment. Then research interests, first is physical geography, weather and climate, urban climate. Third is urban ecosystem. Fourth is environmental management. Then related to the work experience and career history, so become academic position, Associate Professor Faculty Science Kemanusiaan UPSI until now. Then international academic position, appointment of adjunct professor, when January 1st, 2021 to 1 December 2022 by University Muhammadiyah Surakarta, Indonesia.
Sampai bila? Tak boleh ada meeting.
Okay, so let's hear from the professor.
Buat dululah sampai Pak terasa.
Okay, so for Professor Hairi,
Okay, thank you, Dr. Pak Edward. Thank you for Director of the Universitas PGRI Sumatera Barat. Congratulations to become Universitas PGRI Sumatera Barat. I think this is the fourth time I will online with the Universitas PGRI Sumatera Barat. I think 2 times or 3 times I go to STKIP before this. So you can see my slide, Dr. Pak Edward.
Very clear, Professor.
Yes, thank you. I have 30 minutes only, right?
Yes.
So very limited time to explain everything, right? Last time for 1 hour, I think. So I try to fast. This is my topic today, the role of geography to achieve the climate action goals during COVID-19. I think everyone know about SDGs, so I don't have much time to explain all the goals because the first speaker already explained everything. So when we talk about geography, the role of geography, so I think this is the time we talk about the role of geography to achieve the climate action goal during the COVID-19. Why? Because my scope today is more in about 4 items only, 4 focus only. First, I will highlight for introduction for about global climate change. I think everyone know about it. After that, the current situation. I think everyone know about Glasgow last 3 weeks. Everyone be focusing to Glasgow about COP26. We know everyone we have SDGs for until 2030. However, we need also know about COP26, the current situation, and then how our climate action we need to do, and then how our role as a geographer or the role of geography. So this is my focusing for today morning. So when we talk about the role of geography, so everyone know every day our environmental already changes. Time to time, I think all the urban area, either the urban or suburban, either the rural area, every already changed. How we protect our environment. So, in these cases, everyone know about the issue of the climate change. So when we talk about climate change, I think everyone know about the effect of the climate change, from the changes in the ecosystem and desertification, heat wave, massive migration, extreme weather phenomena. I think last 2 weeks having eruption in Indonesia. I got the video, and then how the melting of the pole and rising the sea level already changed every year. And then we can see the extinction of the species, also the issue of acidification of the ocean. I think a lot of effect, if we read the IPCC report, we can know more about climate change. So this is the situation the climate change threat to country and human, either in Southeast Asia, like Indonesia, Malaysia, Brunei, and other country, also European country, also maybe in Asia Pacific country. So when we talk about climate change, it's a crisis multiple year that has profound implication for international peace and stability. This is already highlighted from United Nations. And when we refer to the IPCC report, climate change has a detectable influence to disaster as flood. We can see in situation in Southeast Asia, usually in November, in December. Also, before our experience before 25 years before 2021, we can refer how the heat wave coming around 2016 to 2020, when we talk also global warming and melting of ice sheet. So this situation, how the temperature changes, how human and natural changes, and also the event of the natural disaster changes in Southeast Asia, also in the world, as I highlight in the graph. Also, when we talk about our climate, our futures, there is very important how the COP highlight in Glasgow. Maybe I want to highlight today, COP in 26 in Glasgow, one of conference of the parties hosted by UK in partnership with Italy. There is originally scheduled to take in November 2020. However, during the pandemic COVID-19, it was postponed to the last 3 weeks. So in this conference, we have focusing on talk about reducing the human impact on the planet's climates. So I think this is agenda related with this conference today. So when we talk about our climate for our geography roles, so I just want to highlight what's the importance of COP. It is important to consider the needs of all people around the world, including a new university like Universitas PGRI Sumatera Barat. This is a good agenda for the second international for geography, because this is our role to understand what the world agenda not just in our own country, we're making any decision, but our decision need to related to our world agenda, like agreements about climate change, including SDGs and COP26. Then how our standing together, we can find solution that's work for everyone, either for the university, either for the lecturer, either for student, also the community surrounding surrounding our university, how university commitment and how university can giving engagement and develop and planning and implement the engagement with our community to ensure we have understand the world agenda. There is our rule for the COP26. So why COP26 very important? Because this agenda can help the world, how the world already changing with the development, however, how we can changing the futures. When we talk about SDGs and COP, especially, will allow the 197 parties to agree on action in different areas that we talk climate change and benefit to entire planet, especially about food and farming, how the food security, we need to have the agenda about food and farming and how we control our food security to our country. The second, how we use our energy for sustainability for the futures. And then the third one, how we sustain our ocean, very good to the sustain for development for the futures. How we use our land and our sustainability for the next generation, and how we ensure our development giving a good health and happiness situation. This is agenda, the COP26. So when we talk about COP26, sure, COP26 will be split into the 3 zones for highlight to everyone, especially for the students, because we have a city zone, how we develop the city zone and how we can encourage our people to get involved to sustain our city resilient, become a city resilient with the community in the city. And then the second one is green zone, how the member of the public can get involved here, and including you, me, and our community like school can join the organization in the green zone finding about climate change and the effect of COP will have. So in this green zone, I think we need to have the engagement with our community, with our school, and with our public community, especially including the involvement of university to develop the literacy to our community, and to have the community to develop the community awareness to ensure we have a good green zone. So the third one is the blue zone. This is where there's world leader. When we talk about world leader, and a world leader in United Nations, maybe world leader for COP, also in any area like PGRI. I think the geography is become a world leader for the Indonesia. So like the chairman of Association of Geography highlight before this, we need to have a world leader in our country in geography. So in Sumatra Barat, for sure, University PGRI for the geography department, you need to develop leaders in the Sumatra Barat to ensure we will meet the focusing by COP26. So I think we need to understand the COP roles to develop a world leader in any country. So when we talk about climate action, so surely our role is take urgent action to combat climate change and its impact. So when we talk about climate change, it's a real, not like film only. However, it's a real and undeniable threat in our entire civilization. So the effect of already visible. We can look up how the natural changes, how the disaster coming quite month by month, having the event about disaster coming. So the changes of catastrophic unless we act now, especially through education. So education very important to educate our people, especially for the public community. So when we talk about the role of geography to achieve the climate action, so very important is we need to increase pressure to understand, referred to as a climate crisis. Geography has a distinct advantage in developing more holistic understanding of global environmental changes that's enriched across all the science, including social science and humanities like geography. So geography is more advantage to do their roles to achieve the climate action goals. When we talk about the better understanding from the geography, especially we can look up the diagram, how the impacts of climate change, then how geography giving their roles and having their roles to adapt and to mitigate the impact of climate change. And when we see the SDGs and global goals, so how we relate geography roles, that's mean having the related with the SDGs, like example, climate action, like the life in the land, the goals. So the sustainability city and community, like before this COP26 highlight about the city zone. So this is also related to SDGs. If we go on deep, how the COP highlight about the focusing and how we can relate the SDGs. Maybe I can share my experience when I joined the conference last 2 years in Okayama, Japan. So when we talk about before the current situation on SDG COP26 and we relate to the SDGs, very important, we need to understand the SDGs partnership. The first one about collaborative and sustained governance response involving for the formation of public and private partnership. This is very important to achieve our goal and COP, COP26 focusing. So the second one is the partnership form of the governance has been raised and criticized nearly in equal measure. We need to do this role for the leaders. The third one is more in participant on multiple sectors, including the degree of private citizen involvement. This is very important in any country. For the fourth one is how we can look up an extensive ongoing collaborative between the local government, university researcher, private sector university, including private sector representative, including the insurance industry, the product from the industry, how we can develop the green product, and how we can identify the risks and vulnerabilities facing the metropolitan region, like a COP highlight before this for the city zone. So we need to have the partnership for the agenda for education, for the sharing the experience, for the ending of 2019 before the COVID-19 situation, when I joined the global conference on the teachers education for ESD, or education for the sustainable development in Okayama. During I meet Professor Dr. Charles Hawkins in the Okayama. Maybe I can share the agenda, Dr. Pak Edwards. So when we talk about geography education for sustainability, for education, ESD is now applied in geography curriculum in many countries across all the world. So during the COVID-19 crisis, ESD delivered through online classes and webinar. So I think we need to continue the new norm, online webinar, also online conference, including the online workshop, also maybe online tutoring, also online training of the trainers, like that. So we can cross all the borders in the world to develop the next generation. So when we talk about that, also we need to concern about the society transformation, learning outcome, learning contents, and pedagogy and learning environment. We have a new paradigm and new norm. However, how we can educate our people, our public community, these the challenges to university, to the leaders in geography, to the leaders in SDGs, also including education for sustainability. So this is our roles to understand how our role for the sustainability, including, I want to highlight, when we want to do the online, everything about online or virtual, or maybe Google Meet, WebEx, everything. The challenges is the rural area in the suburban area. For the futures, I think our geography role is how we can develop the mapping of the the internet technology in our country, how our information can expand in all our country, and then how we can deliver our information or literacy about climate change, about geography, about SDGs to our community. Because if our community don't have any the technology of the internet, that they cannot cook all what we want to deliver. So when we talk about that, I want to highlight when we discuss in Okayama, Japan, on the end of 2019, the leadership and SDGs capacity we need to develop. So on that, we need to develop the capacity to connect, to collaborate, and engage the public community, including the leader. So when we want to develop on that, so we need to understand the model of collaborative and constructive leadership. This means we need to understand how we can identify the self-capacity, how we can facilitate the format, and how we can trust and maintain the reciprocal relationship and negotiate conflict situation, and how we understand and demonstrate the social culture, politics, economy, and environmental concern, including the role model of advocacy as the changes agent of the level of the community, national and international policy and practice. This is having a related with the activity and responsibility engaged with community and society. So when we talk on that, for sure, our geographer need to understand the role of SDGs to learn and create. So our geographer need to have a capacity to continue to learn and create together with our community. They need to have the character, to have a character, become a geographer and having the do it the innovate activities and transform what practice a sustainability way of the life by modeling effective ESG practice, especially in university, also in school, also in community, also re-event, because any university, any leadership, they need to have the character of re-event to help our community having a lifelong learning about sustainable environment. So on that part, we need to empowering the role of geography, including empowering SDGs, the role of youth, especially on that. For the education part, we need to develop a teacher's education for sustainable development. This is the statement from the Okayama commitment last the ending before COVID-19. There is our challenges, how our leaders, our role from the geographer to develop the institutional level, to develop the national level, like develop national standard, action plan of the teachers' education to lead and understand ESD and SDGs. Also in international level or part. So how the university, especially for the teachers, how to develop the teachers and formulate joint activities on ESD to share their experience with diversity, like this conference today. Congratulations, Universitas PGRI Sumatera Barat. I hope the next 2 or 22 or 23, you will develop the third geography conference. So in spatial approach in climate action, surely we need to have the development, improve the development of remote sensing and GIS, Geography Information System, is a powerful tool for enriching education for sustainability. So GIS is enable interaction geography, visualization and analysis techniques that are vital to illustrate global climate change, especially how we can use these two tools to our teachers to enrich change to our students in the school, also in any university. So for surely now we have a lot of software relate to the remote sensing and geography information system, GIS, like ArcGIS, Map Info, and GeoServer. I think all the geographers know about it. So for sure, when we talk a role of geography, sure, our job is to drive the innovation for ESD, especially for our teachers, including for our geography to achieve the SDGs goal, also to cook and focusing like COP26 highlight to us last 3 weeks. So example, I think we have a lot of activities before this in Malaysia, including also in South Asia, relate about environment, especially for SDGs, rising to the challenge. Example, in Malaysia, contribution to SDGs. We have the master plan in Malaysia. Also, this is our agenda need to improve, to develop of the young generation for the realization of the 17 goals, global goals. Also, our geography rules, how our role to develop of the young generation to understand about geography literacy, how geography literacy can giving our awareness and our role to mitigate the climate change and how we can adapt do the adaptation or to adapt our life with the climate change situation. So finally, I think time is enough. So I hope everyone understand what our target strengthen the resilient and adaptive capacity to climate-related disaster. Also integrate climate change measurement into policy and plannings, build knowledge and capacity to meet climate change, like today conference, implement the United Nations Framework Convention on the Climate Change. I think all the action plan, all the climate action plan for the energy, for the transportation and land use, for urban forest and open space, for water and waste, public involvement, municipal operation. I think everyone having their role to adapt and to mitigate the climate change challenges in our world. So thank you to organizer, especially for the rector of the Universitas PGRI Sumatera Barat. Congratulations to become a universitas for this year. So we can work together to mitigate the climate action and focusing on the agenda for the COP26 and SDGs goal and do it our role as a geographer. Thank you for everyone. Thank you for moderator giving the opportunity to me to share my ideas. The good one come from the God, and if I having any mistake, I want to say sorry. It's come from my side. So thank you. See you again in the Q&A session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor. Prof. Harry talk about climate change. Yeah? This climate change, such as flood, global warming, and then melting of ice sheet, so it gives a worse effect actually for people and environment. So that's why all of us need to be united to tackle the climate change. Then one of the way is by education, especially in concentrating geography curriculum and geography literacy. So thank you, Professor. This is very important for us. So we hope our nation will be better in the future. Thank you. Big applause for Prof. Harry. Okay, we go on to our third keynote speaker, Professor Dr. Tim Bonnell from National University of Singapore. Are you already in Zoom, Professor?
Yes, I'm here. I'm ready.
Okay. I will highlight a bit the CV of Professor Timothy Gwyn Bonnell, address Department of Geography, National University of Singapore. Then his education and qualification, Bachelor of Arts Honors, Geography First Class, University of Nottingham, United Kingdom. In 1995, then Doctor of Philosophy, Geography, University of Nottingham, United Kingdom, 1999. Then professional position, there are so many positions, such as Director of Asia Research Institute, National University of Singapore, Research Leader, Inter-Asia Engagement Cluster, Asia Research Institute, then Professor Department of Geography, then there are so many more. Then related to the research, his main interest such as urban development in Southeast Asia, Malay mobilities and transnational urban linkage, rational conception of place and landscape, post-colonial urbanism, inter-Asia urban aspiration and futurity. Related to publication, there are so many author books and also journal, and then Professor also become the reviewer of the journal. Then there are so many article indexed by Scopus. So let's hear sharing and best practice from Professor Dr. Tim Bonnell from National University of Singapore. For Professor Dr. Tim Bonnell, time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Selamat siang from Singapore. I hope you're all well. I want to start by thanking the organizers. It's very nice to be part of this event, even remotely via Zoom. Although I do hope to be able to visit you in Padang at some point in the future as well. So yes, my name is Tim Bonnell. Like many of you, perhaps all of you, I'm a geographer. I've been based at the National University of Singapore since 1999, and I'm still partly based in the geography department there, although my main job at the moment is serving as director of the Asia Research Institute, or ARI, which, as you can see from my slide, hopefully is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. So we're a multidisciplinary humanities and social science research institute focusing on the Asian region. We have quite a few geographers, but not only geographers. We're an institute that includes many scholars from other disciplines across the humanities and social sciences too. In addition to my role as director at ARI, I lead a multidisciplinary research cluster on Asian urbanisms, about urban and regional development within Asia, and also about interurban connections to other parts of the world. As both a human geographer and as someone involved in transdisciplinary urban studies, I have a long-standing research interest in urban futures, on plans for the future, visions of the future, and on policies aimed at realizing those plans and visions. So I've recently started to get involved in a collaborative research project in what my collaborators and I term capitals of the future, cities in Southeast Asia that have been planned and designed and built from scratch to serve as future administrative centers. Putrajaya in Malaysia is one of them, Naypyidaw in Myanmar, and of course, we're also very interested in the new Indonesian capital in East Kalimantan, which is planned to replace Jakarta as national capital. Singapore's in the study too as a regional capital in a different sense, a kind of a center of planning, innovation, and in many ways a model for urban future development. So my collaborators and I haven't done that much work on the new Indonesian capital yet, partly because of course it's still in its infancy, but also because pandemic-related restrictions over much of the last 2 years have slowed the project down and have slowed us down too. In any case, I'm sure that many of you in this audience today know as much, possibly more than I do about that project. I imagine that many of you also know much more than I do about the plans for Golden Indonesia 2045, which the New Capital Project seems to form part of and is meant to contribute to. Because of that, rather than focus on Golden Indonesia 2045 or on Visi Indonesia 2045, or even focusing on the Indonesian capital plans, I've decided to present today mainly on some of my earlier work on Malaysia. That's relevant and hopefully interesting to you, partly because I look at Putrajaya, Malaysia's federal government administrative center that was newly constructed in the 1990s, partly because I consider Putrajaya from that time in terms of wider regional development policy in Malaysia, and partly because that policy was in turn bound up with a political vision of Malaysia of the future, known as Vision 2020, Wawasan 2020, which of course many of you will know was associated with former Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad. So I studied urban and regional development in Malaysia for my PhD thesis in the 1990s. It was eventually published as this book, which is on the right-hand side of the slide here, in 2004. But then more recently, as the year 2020 approached, I began to look back at that prior work that I'd done for my PhD and to consider what Vision 2020 had come to mean by that point in time. So it's kind of like a bit like all of you looking back at Golden Indonesia 2045 in the year 2045 or 2046 perhaps. So my presentation is mostly about Malaysia's Vision 2020 approached geographically. And as you can see here, my presentation is in three main parts, four main parts. The first three are to do with Vision 2020. Firstly, what was or is Vision 2020? This is partly definitional, but in more geographical language, we might ask, where did this vision come from? Secondly, what were the effects of Vision 2020? How did it manifest? And again, geographically, where did it manifest? Thirdly, what became of Vision 2020? Where did it end up, including the year 2020 itself? And where is it today? Then a fourth and concluding part of my presentation, as you can see, is a comparative one. I will begin to add a comparative dimension, thinking about some of the similarities and differences between Malaysia's Vision 2020 and Indonesia's more recent plans, Visi 2045, and then think about also some lessons from that comparison. So my presentation, I think it's fair to say, is rather different from the previous two keynotes, which I have to say I enjoyed very much. But hopefully I offer a complementary historical and comparative perspective to the much more recent and up-to-date presentations that Professors Muhammad Dimyati and Muhammad Ari Ibrahim have given so far. Okay, so first, what was or is Vision 2020? Well, it started as part of a speech entitled Malaysia the Way Forward, which was delivered by Dr. Mahathir Mohamad at the Malaysian Business Council in KL, in Kuala Lumpur, in February 1991. Originally, half an hour or so as a speech, but subsequently presented and published in various modified forms, including the book, which is on the slide here. The Way Forward laid out a vision for Malaysia to become an industrialized and fully developed country by the year 2020. It sketched a wide-ranging set of dimensions in relation to which Malaysia and Malaysians should strive to become fully developed. And it outlined some of the measures intended to help lay the foundations for that developmental journey to the year 2020. It's quite a difficult document to summarize. On the one hand, as I mentioned, and perhaps revealingly, the speech was first delivered in English, not in Bahasa Malaysia, to an audience of business people. Many of its recommendations had to do with the role of the private sector and the private sector's relationship to government. And it set a specific growth target, namely that GDP should be 8 times larger in the year 2020 as compared to when Vision 2020 was launched in the year 1990. On the other hand, Mahathir explicitly cautioned against growth fixation, and his speech also included mention of social, spiritual, psychological, and even ecological aspects of what would make for a fully developed Malaysia of the future. The extent to which the text of the speech and the catchy phrase Vision 2020 are directly attributable to Dr. Mahathir, as opposed to speechwriters, is still uncertain. But those kinds of details are not so important for my bigger picture mapping and framing of the where question. Where did this national vision of the future come from? What were some of the key geohistorical trends and ideological influences that became assembled in the discourse attributed to Dr. Mahathir? I put a few suggestions on the slide here. From existing work on Malaysian studies, we can identify, amongst other things, modernization theory, the conception of the possibility of a transition from a developing to a developed country. We can see influences, wider political and political economic influences, the influence of Reaganomics and Thatcherism, the deregulation and free markets, the kind of policy shifts we would today probably call neoliberalism. We can also see in Vision 2020 conceptions of East Asian industrialization as a miracle that unsettled previously Western-centered understandings of development. And that, of course, recalibrated developmental understandings of where is the future away from the West and towards Asia, especially initially Japan at that time and South Korea. But there are also very important national or domestic backstories to Vision 2020. Vision 2020 contrasted with the prior 2 decades in Malaysia of affirmative action for Bumiputra, that is predominantly ethnic Malay members of the population. That prior policy had been intended to allow Malays and other indigenous Malaysians to catch up economically with the non-Malay and especially Chinese community in economic terms. To cut a potentially long story short, while the affirmative action policies had been seen as discriminating against Chinese and Indian Malaysians, Vision 2020 envisaged a more inclusive, multi-ethnic Bangsa Malaysia as opposed to Bangsa Melayu. Now, I won't go into more details on that. For an audience of geographers like this, it's also worth pointing out a spatial dimension to Malaysia's affirmative action policies. Malays were historically much more rural-based and bound up with the agricultural economy compared to more urban-based Indian and especially Chinese communities. So the stated intention of eliminating association of particular races with different levels of wealth from the 1970s also had important urban and regional development implications, driving government efforts to spread wealth from cities and large towns, especially along the west coast of Peninsular Malaysia, to other parts of the national territory, and also efforts to urbanize Malays through incorporating them into city life and urban industrial economy. Suffice it to say, as a political vision of a socially and more territorially inclusive developed Malaysia of the future, not to mention a catchy phrase in its own right, Vision 2020 really caught on. It became extremely popular in Malaysia in the 1990s. Probably much of that popularity had to do precisely with the catchy phrase, Vision 2020. It was very successful in seizing the imagination of Malaysians and inspiring. in a way that none of the regular, more technical policy plans, the so-called 5-year plans in Malaysia, ever had done before or since. By the time I got to Kuala Lumpur, to KL, in the early 1990s, Vision 2020 was everywhere, not just in official speeches, plans, newspapers, and media reports, but also as slogans on buildings, like the one on the slide here, and billboards, advertising a whole array of products and activities. So yes, Vision 2020 really did catch on. It was referred to in all kinds of ways. But moving on to the second section of my presentation, what were its effects and where? One answer could be that in and of itself, Vision 2020 didn't do or undo anything very much at all. But at the same time, the term Vision 2020 became bound up in the charting, legitimizing, regulating, and even measuring of particular national ways forward, including in terms of dynamics of material, spatial transformation, and geographies of development. So my own first engagement with Vision 2020 was through research on the Petronas Towers and the wider KLCC, or Kuala Lumpur City Centre project. And this was actually for my undergraduate geography dissertation in the early 1990s at the University of Nottingham in the UK. Plans for KLCC were announced at around the same time as Vision 2020, and the project was explicitly cast in being aligned with Malaysia's long-term vision from the outset. I initially approached plans for the building through the lens of landscape, the concept of landscape in cultural geography, looking at how architects, artists, and journalists' representations disclose the wider contextual forces of their making. But it soon became clear to me that in all kinds of ways, KLCC was not merely representative of wider governmental goals or political economic dynamics, it was in and of itself an active transformative force, most obviously in the material space of the construction site on the former colonial racecourse, which you can see in the image on the left here. And then on the right is the building that, or the centerpiece building that replaced and was built on top of the former colonial racecourse. In wider terms, the Petronas Towers' world record-breaking height put Kuala Lumpur on world maps, re-imaging the city, a term that's well known amongst urban geographers, and indeed in putting Malaysia on world maps as somewhere worth investing in, somewhere worth visiting. In addition, although it was difficult to grasp, there were also important, effective, and psychological dimensions to this form of futuring. Mahathir himself coined the term Malaysia boleh, Malaysia can, I guess it's probably Malaysia bisa. And the Petronas Towers was often depicted in terms of catching up with and even eclipsing the West. And although this was partly about the possibility of a future yet to come, the construction of the two towers stood and were presented as material evidence that Malaysia was already on the right developmental path or road, ascending to fully developedness story by story. At the same time, this world-class piece of infrastructure in the making served as a kind of normative yardstick in aesthetic and moral terms. The Petronas Towers became the centerpiece of what a fully developed Malaysia was meant to be and was meant to look like. And it stood in juxtaposition to other existing elements of the city, especially informal or squatter housing that was thereby rendered out of place visually and aesthetically. The centrality of the Petronas Towers and KLCC to Vision 2020 as future was not just a matter of the coincidence of its inception at around the same time as Vision 2020, but also because of the long-standing place of high-rise and high-tech, especially engineering and design, in imaginings of futurity. That, along with Mahathir's personal preference for things that were ambitious, superlative, the biggest and the best, gave ambitious civil servants, politicians, consultants, and developers opportunities to justify large-scale urban development projects in terms of Vision 2020. And just to prove I really am a geographer, map. The development corridor stretching southwards from KL, in particular, included a whole series of large-scale urban and infrastructure projects, including Malaysia's Federal Government Administrative Centre, Putrajaya, reportedly with advice from Japanese management guru Kenichi Ome and McKinsey consultants. The corridor also came to include an intelligent cyber city called Cybergiant. This whole zone was packaged as the high-tech multimedia super corridor, or MSC for short. My doctoral thesis, as I mentioned, and eventually published as this book, was specifically about how the so-called intelligent futures of MSC, in line, of course, with Vision 2020's goals of national economic and technological upgrading, legitimized large-scale socio-spatial transformation that included acquisition of land, displacement of those people whose lives and livelihoods weren't considered to be suitably innovative, technopreneurial, or intelligent. And of course, I think this historical comparison is worth making. If you substitute the word smart today for the word intelligent back in the 1990s, then the same kind of effects, I think, are visible today. People often being dispossessed of their land to make way for smart city developments across, well, not just Southeast Asia, but across much of Asia today. You justify certain kinds of exciting developments in the future in order to justify often quite dramatic effects, some of which can have negative consequences for some people in the present. Technological mastery, which we also see in Golden Indonesia 2045, technological mastery had long been a fascination for Mahathir Mohamad, especially in relation to the historical golden age of Islam. And it featured very much in his Way Forward speech. That despite that kind of civilizational optimism, the ostensibly intelligent, high-tech development of MSC in the 1990s was actually really much more about short-term horizons of real estate development. Also, in explicitly urban regional development terms, it's worth noting a contradiction that the MSC ran against goals of addressing uneven territorial development in Malaysia. What it did was to focus national infrastructural investment around the existing main urban center, Greater KL. In this sense, the territorially focused geography of the push to a fully developed 2020 was very much in line with, perhaps even at the forefront of neoliberal urban rescaling. Discursively or rhetorically, the greater KL-centeredness of these developments was reconciled with domestic regional development goals by casting MSC as a test bed, which would eventually be replicated elsewhere across the Malaysian national territory, as part of an information age approach to development that would supposedly see Malaysia's GDP increase by 8 times by the year 2020. And as you can see from the chart on the right, the idea was that the information approach would enable GDP to grow even more. I should also acknowledge that despite the predominance of this kind of techno-economic developmentalism, Vision 2020 was also mobilized in other ways by those oriented to other futures, more ecologically friendly, inclusive, caring forms of futures, including in ways that oppose the dominant state-led techno-economic thrust. I don't have time to elaborate on those here, but we might wish to return to them in question and answer. So instead, I'm going to move on to the third component of my project, which, as you can see, has to do with the question of what became of Vision 2020. Where did it end up, including during the year 2020 itself? Well, having become not only central to political discourse and horizons in Malaysia in the 1990s, but also part of the lives and future-oriented imaginings of a whole generation of Malaysians, Vision 2020 didn't simply die when Mahathir stepped down as Prime Minister in 2003. However, although his successor, Abdullah Badawi, said that realization of Vision 2020 was his primary aim too, he did not pursue it with anything like the same vigor as Mahathir. One of the things that I've done is to analyze references to Vision 2020 in the English and Malay language daily newspapers in Malaysia across this period. And what it does, what you can see from this is some notable continuing geographies of Vision 2020 from the Mahathir era. I put just two of them on the slide here. The first concerns reports on other countries concerned to learn from and replicate aspects of Vision 2020, either as a branding tagline, Nairobi's Vision 2030, Andhra Pradesh Vision 2020, or as a planning timeline for national developmental transitions in general. And in some cases, there was a more specific association with developments elsewhere with the multimedia super corridor as a signifier of techno-economic progress. The second continuing geography is domestic or national and concerns internal efforts to emulate the supposed successes of KL-centered urban development from the 1990s. Some districts and cities in Malaysia, for example, announced that they were already intelligent enough to be considered fully developed well before the year 2020. Others merely expressed an interest in trying to catch up. Overall, perhaps the key point here for the flow of my presentation is that while there were domestic efforts at replicating or catching up with earlier KL-centered urban development, for the most part, they were more modest than during the Mahathir era. And that was one of the reasons why Mahathir Mohamad in the end became very critical of Abdullah Badawi. Abdullah Badawi's own successor from 2009, Najib Razak, was certainly bolder, even forging ahead with plans, not very imaginatively, for, yes, another really tall building, as if KL really needed one, with even more stories than the Petronas Tower. The main contractor for this building was a Chinese construction company, and the project was initiated under the now infamous One Malaysia Development Berhad, 1MDB fund that Najib established. As 1MDB came under increasing international scrutiny for allegations of corruption, in January 2017, Najib launched Transformasi Nasional 2050, or TN50 for short. So this pushed the national developmental horizon forward another 30 years from 2020 to 2050. And a lot of effort went into trying to differentiate this from Vision 2020, partly because Najib politically wanted to differentiate himself from Mahathir Mohamad, who was increasingly politically critical of Najib. And as you can see from the image on the right, a lot of this differentiating factor went on the rhetorical focus of hearing and harnessing the bottom-up aspirations of young people. Some of you know the political story here. Mahathir, as a 90-plus-year-old, eventually became leader of political opposition to Najib. In straightforward demographic terms, the whole focus on TN50 became unsettling to Malaysians who had no memory of a time when national futures were going to be any other time than 2020. So in the years leading up to 2020, with Mahathir back in the political picture, there was actually a resurgence of interest in Vision 2020, not just in political discourse and in the media, but also in artistic and cultural productions. One that I've examined, which you can see on the screen here, which I'm not going to have time to go into in detail, is Malaysian artist Mark Tay's projects on the complete futures of Malaysia. Yeah? And in particular, his theatre piece, Version 2020. What happened in the wider context is that Mahathir ended up winning the election in 2018, replacing Najib Razak as Prime Minister. I don't have time to go into any details here, apart from recalling the prominence of memories of flying cars in future images of Malaysia from the 1990s. The important thing here is that Vision 2020 had become a significant part of a whole generation of Malaysians' anticipations and idealizations of the future and their relationship with state planning and policy. Ultimately, Prime Minister Mahathir was Prime Minister during the year 2020, which nobody would have expected. And there was a lot of hopefulness around this initially, but it soon became apparent that he was going to slip back into his old ways. And the subsequent combination of political instability and the COVID-19 pandemic meant that post-Vision 2020 futures gained much less attention in the year 2020 than I'd anticipated. Retro future imaginings of super tall buildings and flying cars were replaced by social distancing and the need for community pantries to provide food for people in cities who were being failed by an overstretched and perhaps even incompetent national government. And the picture here on this Malaysian newspaper slide at the bottom is actually in the Philippines community pantry, but inspired by Malaysia's civil society-led white flag movement. Okay, so I've reached the fourth and final and concluding section of my presentation on Wawasan 2020 and Golden Indonesia 2045 in comparative perspective. And as you can see here, I've decided to divide this into three subsections. The first concerning similarities or commonalities between the two, the second highlighting some differences, and the third distilling some concluding lessons from this comparative approach. All right, so first of all then, similarities or commonalities. First, both of these clearly are simply long-term visions of national transformation, which are intended to extend beyond the lifetime of their proponents, beyond the political lifetime of Mahathir Mohamad or Joko Widodo, although in Mahathir's case, he ended up returning to the political scene unexpectedly when he was 92 or 93 years old. I wonder if Jokowi will do the same. Second, the visions themselves were multidimensional in the sense that they included social, cultural, ecological dimensions, but at the same time, they ended up becoming very much focused on the economic, the infrastructural, and the technological. So we see in Indonesia specific GDP and income targets, which I think are very difficult to reconcile with commitments to, sustainable development goals and such like. Poverty alleviation is obviously really important. Both of these visions involved a national economic transformation away from the export of primary products and low-wage manufacturing towards higher value-added forms of economy. And of course, as I've already said, there's a strong emphasis in both on science, technology, research and development, innovation, perhaps also teaching STEM subjects. It'd be interesting to find out where geography fits in relation to that in the Indonesian context, for example. And then third and finally on this slide, both of these visions are bound up, I think, with the prominence of urban and regional development. The construction of two new administrative centers, Putrajaya and the Ibu Kota Negara Baru in Indonesia. So both had prominent urban foci to them. In terms of differences, although both involved the construction of new national administrative centers, the locational choice of them were very different. Putrajaya was built as an extension to the existing national metropolitan center, be the equivalent of locating Indonesia's new capital in Bogor or something like that, right? Whereas in Indonesia, obviously the search has been in the outer islands, especially in Kalimantan. So it's a very different locational logic to the new capital project. Although, as I have said, in Malaysia, the idea was that Putrajaya became a test bed, which would then be replicated in other parts of the country too. I think there's differences in terms of degrees of support or traction for these two different visions. Vision 2020, as I said, became incredibly popular in popular culture as well as in the political domain. I'm a bit out of touch with Indonesia because I haven't been able to get off this island of Singapore for the last 2 years, but my understanding is that Golden Indonesia 2045 hasn't quite had the traction of Vision 2020, although the very fact that this conference is arranged around Golden Indonesia 2025 suggests that it is is growing in significance. And then the third thing I just wanted to point out in terms of historical differences is that obviously the climate crisis, which we've heard out about, and the Sustainable Development Goals we've heard about from the two previous keynotes, the urgency of ecological climate targets is way greater now in the 2020s than it was in the 1990s when Putrajaya was first developed. So although that did include some sustainable development rhetoric in it, I think that there's an opportunity in current developments in Indonesia, well, not just an opportunity, but there's actually a moral responsibility for developments to be much more aligned with these global climate and environmental targets. Finally, in terms of lessons, it's difficult to make any definitive conclusions about the new Indonesian capital, and especially in terms of the uncertain context of the ongoing pandemic. But it's been pretty clear throughout, including during times when Indonesia was faring very badly in terms of COVID-19, that Joko Widodo is not going to let go of this project and the wider infrastructure-centered national vision of 2045. And there's probably a lesson in that in its own right, which is that once political leaders become highly invested in symbolic and material projects, it's very difficult to dissuade them from changing their mind. Whatever the changing circumstances, whatever the changing priorities. That we can see that in Indonesia with the pandemic today. In the case of Malaysia, Mahathir refused to let go of these symbolic projects even during the global financial crisis. Secondly, we need to think critically about what powerful and seductive visions of the future do in the present. These visions don't merely represent the future, they have effects today. Yeah, some of those effects can be positive. They unify people. They bring people together around shared and common concerns, which can be very progressive. But more negatively, they can be used to justify specific forms of development, prioritize certain kinds of investments in certain geographical areas and not in others. And these can have highly socially and spatially uneven consequences. So I actually see one of the important things that we as geographers can do is precisely to keep our critical spatial eyes trained on such developments and outcomes. We geographers, and this is my concluding point, we don't have to limit ourselves to mapping outcomes shaped by others in Malaysia or Indonesia or Singapore or anywhere else. We can play an active role in shaping futures in socially, environmentally, and spatially equitable ways. We can play a role in shaping inclusive futures with no one left behind. Thank you again, everyone, and congratulations to the organizers of this event.
Okay, thank you, Professor. I will try to review a bit from Professor Tim. It talked about the Golden Indonesia 2014 and comparative perspective. Yeah? So it says that Malaysia started Vision 2020 from developing country to fully developed country. Then the Vision 2020 is successful to seize the imagination and to inspire. And the effect is the building become higher and mightier. Yeah? Then there are differences, also similarities between the Malaysia and Indonesia perspective. First, related to the long-term vision, then multidimensional senses of developed future, and then prominence of urban regional development. Then for the differences, capital location, degrees of support of traction, then height of environmental concern, awareness since 1990. So it is the difference between the Indonesia and Malaysia related to the geographical problem. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Professor. Give applause for Professor Tim. Okay, now we invite our last speaker, Dr. Candidate Erna Juwita from University PJRI Sumatera Barat, Indonesia. I will highlight the CV. So his research is focused on geografi kebencanaan, ya, mitigasi adaptasi bencana, ekologi, ilmu lingkungan, kartografi dan kosmografi. Then right now she is almost finishing for the doctorate program. Then related to the research, there are so many research that she has already conducted. Then some of the articles also indexed by Scopus. Then there are so many awards also. Maybe we can hear from the Dr. Candidate Erna Juwita about her experience and also best practice on geography. For Dr. Candidate Erna Juwita, time is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Mr. Edward, and thank for the presenter for the flight time. And our great honor to Dr. Muhammad Dimyati, MSE, who get info and prepared his flyback time, and we need to inform that he is a general chairman of Geography Association in Indonesia. Okay, my presentation today, disaster management. The cycle of disaster management, the case of post-disaster flash flood. Disaster management, the cycle of disaster management, the case of post-disaster flash flood. And our activities include the aspect of disaster planning and response before, during, and after the disaster occurs. Flood in Solok Selatan, West Sumatra, December 19. The supplement located in area they are not intended for the supplement and are on the area of the high zone because the area of the fall. What shall be done to minimize the occurrence of disaster rise height? Disaster management, a series of activities designed to prevent the loss of the soul, reduce suffering, and giving information to the public and the authorities about the rise, reduce property demand and loss of the economic resource, and speed of the recovery process. Next, the cycle of disaster management. Number one, emergency response, emergency assistance and recovery, rehabilitation, reconstruction, and development. Next, prevention and mitigation, early warning and preparedness. Emergency response, the effort made immediately at the time of the event of disaster to mitigate the impact, especially in the form of rescue victim and possession, evacuation, and displacement. Emergency assistance was an attempt to provide assistance related to the fulfillment of basic needs from food, clothing, the place of temporary residence, health, sanitation, and clean water, approach to the provision of assistance, conventional phase empowerment. Next, recovery. The process of recovery of communication affected by disaster with the proper functioning of the back of infrastructure and facilities in its original state. The effort is to improve infrastructure and basic service, example road, electricity, clean water, market, health center, attached. Rehabilitation, effort or step take after a disaster to help people improve his home, public and social facilities, as well as review the economy. Next, reconstruction, the program of medium term and long term for the improve of the physical, social, and economic to restore the life of the society in a better condition than before. Prevention, the offerment of the occur of the disaster. If it is possible, the objective the change. For the example, prohibit the burning of forests in the field. Prohibit mining in areas that are steep. And mitigation, efforts were made to minimize the impact caused by the disaster. There are two forms of mitigation. Structural mitigation, example made, check dam, embankment of the rivers. Mitigation of non-structural, example rule like riot and training. Early warning, effort to provide warning a sign that disaster is likely to happen soon. A provision of early warning to reaching out to go the community. Son, for not confusing and official. Prepare, effort made into active the disaster through organizing the steps that are provide effective and ready to go. For example, preparation of means of communication, command post and setting of up evacuation sheet. Assessment of emergency and activity of collecting information that becomes the basic for planning and implementation of emergency operation. And a generator of the assessment of emergency. One, the first step for the stage, 2 phase, 3 sample, 4 general principle, getting the full description, although not necessary everything is true. And study focus, what kind of emergency, who need help, Example identification of highly vulnerability group. How is their condition known and what resources are available directly to them? And there is a gap what is between the need and resources available. What is do not by the reverse again is LSM and other organization. The initial step, one taking before of the population. Number two, the analysis of the activities of the request, what activities they were before the crisis, who carry out the activity, what activities are they doing now, and what activity change due to crisis. Number three, resource analysis and control of resource. What resource do they currently have? Who control is the resource that was before the crisis and who is the control now? Effective planning. Identify the composition of the population based on gender. Example, family status and community readiness. Prepare the community for emergency. And post-emergency death, trauma, spirited, no rule, neo lifeless, lost control, change from independent to dependent, physical legal change, and change in social status. Basic principle, someone has self-esteem and they feel value, capacity to change, the need for community support, the right to a decent life, the right to give and receive help, and that to help other. My goal in dependent approach. Resource of the community plus resource from the outset as a catalyst produce and partnership to solve the problem hidden and independent. A form of service provide support and fulfillment of basic needs such as food, water, shelter, fall and heal service. Help identify vulnerability group in need of heal protection and coordinate parties involved in humanities aid. And service action, factor one, review, assess need and resource, formulation weekly and development follow-up plan. Phase two, forming the foundation, representative from the request, schedule and meeting, select implement partner and do to training staff. And phase three, for capacity form program to vulnerable group, rehabilitation, psychosocial, employment, and train the most recourse health education activities teaching. The fundamental factor age request is not same and age group is homogeneous. Refers a human being who have the power and capacity to make the emergency response program. Other activities, monitor food distribution, helping refer with a special need, follow up the access of medical, investigate the active of the community, organize community activity, and give health care. Okay. Thank you. Terima kasih atas segala atensinya. Mohon maaf jika ada kekurangan. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Candidate Erna Juwita. She discussed about the disaster management. It is divided into three stages. First is before disaster management, during disaster management, and then after. So before, related to the how to people prepare themselves, and then how the government or some people focus on early warning. Then during the disaster, it should be focused on emerging response, emergency response, such as emergency assistance. Then after the disaster, people need recovery, improving the infrastructure, then rehabilitation, and also prevention and mitigation. So this is very important for people when they got into the disaster. Okay, so we have already finished for the keynote speaker. Then we go on to the question. We have one question. It goes to Professor Tim Bonner. Hello, Professor. There is one question for you from the student. The question is, does the Vision 2020 works successful? In Malaysia, and also what do you think in Indonesia for the 2045?
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I didn't notice that question. To me, as a critical geographer, I think part of the question we have to ask from the outset is, what does success mean? Right? Do we take the measure of success as being the original stated aims of Vision 2020, or can we measure success in other ways? So in the case of Malaysia, for example, Malaysia did not meet the economic growth targets, which were part of the original aims for Vision 2020. So in those terms, in those strict economic terms, we would say that Vision 2020 was not successful. It wasn't achieved. But does that mean that it simply wasn't successful? It didn't achieve anything? To me, we have to think about other ways of measuring the effects of these kinds of visions. And in Malaysia, I think that Vision 2020 spurred a whole generation of people to think critically about what kind of futures they want, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean reaching, what's the point in reaching a certain amount of GDP per capita if you have no forest left, or if traffic is terrible, or your life is worse, right? So in its own terms, Vision 2020 did not reach its own targets, but I still think that it had a useful role in getting people to think about the future individually and collectively, and to think about what kind of futures they wanted and how to get there. And so I think the lesson there, and I noticed there were other questions here about this posed in Indonesian on the chat. I think that the lesson here is, for young people, everybody on this screen appreciates that geography is important. We all know that, right? Because we're all geographers. But I think it's important in ways that, yes, means that we have to learn technical skills, GIS, and the other kind of skills which have been highlighted by the presenters. But I also think it means that we need to continue to be politically critical, right? We shouldn't just be contributing to other people's policies if those policies have negative effects. We should be thinking about what makes for a better policy, and what ways can we as geographers help to shape the policies in the first place, rather than merely try to realize them. So I think to go back to the original question, I think we have, part of our role is, as geographers, is to think about what is a successful future and how do we measure it, rather than just taking uncritically other people's measures of the future especially politicians who are always obsessed with GDP and growth targets rather than the kind of ecological and sustainable goals that we all value as geographers. I'm sorry, I can't say that in Bahasa Indonesia. Yeah, but hopefully it made some sense. Thank you.
Okay, so pertanyaan ini berasal dari Hilda, Hilda Amelia Gusti. Jadi dari penyampaian Profesor Tim tadi mengatakan kita harus mendefinisikan kembali apa itu sebenarnya dengan kata sukses sendiri. Apalah artinya sebuah sukses kalau harus itu merusak dari ketatanan hidup dan juga hutan-hutan ataupun ada kemacetan seperti itu. Jadi harus kita pertimbangkan kembali apa yang maksud dengan kesuksesan dalam visi itu sendiri. Seharusnya sebuah visi itu memang memberikan suatu kebijakan yang terbaik untuk kehidupan manusia yang terbaik. Seperti itu kira-kira. Okay, thank you, Professor. We go on to the next question. It goes to Prof. Hairi, I think. Prof. Hairi, are you still there? Prof. Hairi, are you still in Zoom? No? Okay. If not, I will try to give it to Dr. Dimyati. Dr. Dimyati, are you still in Zoom? No? Okay.
He's just muted. He's muted.
Okay. Yes, Dr. Dimyati. So there is question actually. It is related to Indonesia. Yeah. What if the Indonesian development only focus on the economic side? What will be the effect for the environment, social, and also the process of the building or development itself? That's the question, Doctor. What is your opinion for that? You're muted.
So, okay. So, okay. Thank you very much. So, can you repeat the questions? Okay. Because I read there are 2 or 3 questions in chat room.
There is question. It is related to Indonesia. What if the Indonesia only focus on the economic sides? Meanwhile, it doesn't focus on the environment, social, and the process of the development of the country itself.
Okay, thank you very much. I think, I do not think like that. But in my opinion, we concern not only in economic field, but in many things. But the economic field is only one of the most concern of this government. Because as you know well that we have many programs to support the social activities and also engineering and so on and so on. So I think what you just think that we are only concerned in economic things, in my opinion, that is not 100% true. So that is my opinion. So actually, Indonesian government concerned in many aspects, economic as well as social and others aspect for developing these countries. And if you allow me to answer the question from students in chat room, I'll also want to give some note related to the question from Mas Julius, Chandika, and so on. So from Mas Julius, an example, he wrote the question in chat room, and also Chandika. And I think we as a geographer have to master the science of geography. And we have to work in the field of related to the environment, space, or region, or others geography related. And we have to show that the geographer have an important role, and show all the parties that the existence of geographers has significant benefit for many parties. As a students, I think, the student task is to study, among other things. So you as students have a good achievement and participate in national activities, and so that our existence is very useful for other parties in various ways. For example, we sometimes helping SMEs or MKM activities or others activities related to geographic field. And we as geographers, I think, have to not only knows the techniques of geography, but we have to be involved in formulating regulation in this government, because if we can participating in the formulating regulation, we can share our knowledge as geographer, and of course we will share many things related to spatial phenomena. It means we also consider environment and also consider many others related to geography. So this is my general answer from what just you mentioned, and also what just 2 or 3 students wrote in the chat room. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Muhammad Dimyati.
Yeah, and sorry, one short note. And thank you very much for Prof. Tim Burang, Prof. Timothy. Thank you for participating in this conference. And I want to have communication to Geography of NUS for near future, because I'm also come from the Department of Geography, University of Indonesia. So some days I want to contact you to make a future collaboration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Muhammad Dimyati. Do you want to say something, Professor Tim?
Of course, I'm delighted to further collaboration between our universities. But academically, I thought that those responses were excellent from Professor Muhammad Dimyati just now. In particular, the issue that development today in Indonesia and elsewhere, and visions of development, definitely do now extend way beyond the economic and the infrastructural. So I wasn't suggesting that the Indonesian government is only focused on the economic or the infrastructural, although I will say that I think politicians everywhere often tend to get focused on those indicators because they're the ones that most people most of the time most often care about. But if we're looking historically and geographically, comparing contemporary Indonesia with the Malaysia that I studied in the 1990s, one of the things that's very clear that's different today in Indonesia as compared to Malaysia in the 1990s is precisely the amount of attention which is being given to sustainability, to climate change, to environment, in ways that probably were unthinkable 30 years ago. And yes, governments themselves now really have to take these kinds of things seriously. Even if the individual politicians themselves don't care, they have to, because they have to be seen to be aligning with these international climate targets and the SDGs and other kinds of international commitments. what I think this means for us as geographers is that we have a remarkably powerful moment now for geographers, perhaps an unprecedentedly strong moment for geographers to participate, not just in realizing existing policies, but as was just said then, developing local regulations, national level regulations, contributing to the shaping of policy, because our knowledge of environment and its relation to people is valued today in ways that go beyond what was thinkable even 20 or 30 years ago. So this is a fascinatingly exciting time to be a geographer in Indonesia and in other places too, I think.
Yes, I agree, Prof. Tim.
Okay, thank you, Professor Tim. Jadi ada pertanyaan tadi tentang peran mahasiswa ya. Nah, jadi sebenarnya peran mahasiswa itu sungguh sangat penting sekali. Jadi dalam proses pembangunan manusia dan lingkungan itu sendiri tidak hanya berfokus kepada pemerintah saja, tapi juga mahasiswa untuk melibatkan diri untuk proses pembangunan itu sendiri ya. Kalau kita hanya mengharapkan dari pemerintah saja mungkin akan terbatas. Tapi kalau kita mendapatkan mahasiswa, ide-ide dan kritik saran itu sungguh sangat penting sekali bagi kita, apalagi dalam bentuk-bentuk konferensi seperti ini. Oke, Prof. Hairi, are you still in Zoom, Prof. Hairi?
Yeah. So I can respond.
Okay, Prof. Hairi, there is one question for you. How do you differentiate between SDGs and also MDGs? You are still muted, Professor.
I look up in the chat a lot of questions coming about sustainable development.
Yes,
so I think everyone asks about how to having awareness in SDGs, how about MDGs and SDGs, also about a new generation, how we can develop a new generation to become good one on SDGs. Overall, that the question. So when we look up the history of the SDGs, before the SDGs is MDGs, and the millennium focusing in millennium sustainable development. Especially for the students, if you look up the MDGs, I think the MDGs only are having 9 pillars. So if you look up some part of SDGs now having 17. So the holistic of the sustainable development approach. So in SDGs model, they already upgrade some part of the concept of SDGs, especially about climate action, regarding the real situation about climate change, including also the development model. So when we look at the development model, we need to having the goal like partnership. So the holistic model come from the SDGs. However, the model from the development of MDGs still we are put inside the SDGs model. We just upgrade the MDGs to become the SDGs. That is the philosophy of the SDGs. I think if I want to explain all the by pillar to pillar, I think quite I need to explain more like lecture. So I think our student need to read the history of the SDGs from the MDGs to SDGs. The very important how the development of SDGs is a holistic approach than the MDGs, because MDGs only having the 9 pillars. So when we upgrade the SDGs, we will upgrade regarding the new challenges in the world, like climate change, about one we related now about the partnership regarding all the issues about environment. So I think like what Professor Tim Barnell look up before this, how the mission and vision, they're having the challenges. So how all the goal having a 17 pillars, we also create a new pillars like community sustainability. So if you look up the new development coming, like KLCC to the new tallest tallest building now. If Prof. Tim Barnell know, now we have a new one developed in Malaysia. After the twin building, Petronas twin building. So they will also be giving the impact to the society. So mission and vision, the agenda or MDGs and SDGs still having a same vision, a mission and vision. However, the pillars we will upgrade the pillars to to strengthen our mission and vision. There is the situation if we look up now. So for the new generation, especially for new teachers, a new junior geographer, I think they need to understand the philosophy of philosophy of mission and vision, MDGs and SDGs. However, we not only a literacy about MDGs and SDGs only. I think the philosophy Dr. Mohdim Yati already explained before this. However, we need to not a planning, not a mission and vision. However, implementation, how the activity, we need to do the activity and strengthen the activity as a mission and vision about SDGs. Because for students, they need to do the activities, and they need to understand what the activities we do is to achieve the mission and vision for the SDGs. So for for the student in Indonesia, especially any island like Sumatra Island or Java Island or Sulawesi Island, I think I already highlight more time. We need to increase our activity to our community. That means at the same time we will improve our community engagement regarding the SDGs mission and vision. There is the very important approach we need to do. I will congratulate to the Indonesian Geographical Association, one of the Fly Society, the Fly Association doing a lot in the others island. Maybe when Universitas PJRI Sumatera Barat launching for this year, I think you need to have a SDG center like Diponegoro University. As I highlight before this, they already developed. So also like the others university having the SDG center. So in this platform, we can do a lot of activities and platform to develop, plan and develop also implementation, the activities relate with SDGs, and how we can look up all the issue like changes of mission and vision, changes of sprawl of development. So challenges are when, if look up now the mission vision, how the president of Indonesia want to change Jakarta as a center of the country of Indonesia to the Kalimantan. So all this we need to look up and how we can brainstorm if we have the center of the SDGs. So I propose for Universitas PJRI Sumatera Barat, you need to develop the SDG center. That means we can develop the partnership within the Southeast Asia expertise, which the community, local governance and governance, also the industry, how we can collaborate and develop the awareness of the awareness of sustainable development in the Southeast Asia. Maybe we can collaborate with Professor Tim Barnell with the NUS for future when we develop the SDGs. Also, we can relate that having the connecting with the United Nations SDGs like RCE in Tokyo, Japan. So I think we have a good agencies in Southeast Asia. However, how we can communicate, connect and engage with all the agencies, at the same time we will relate with our activities, with our students and communities in either in Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, or in Brunei. I think this we need to do for our community, including our university. Thank you.
Oke, thank you Profesor Hari. Jadi apa sih perbedaan antara SDGs dengan MDGs? Jadi SDGs ini adalah hasil upgrade dari MDGs sendiri, di mana MDGs itu hanya memiliki 9 pilar, sementara SDGs sendiri sudah memiliki 17 pilar. Terus terkait juga dengan pertanyaan tentang ekonomi tadi ya, jadi Indonesia itu sebenarnya tidak hanya fokus kepada ekonomi saja, sebagaimana disampaikan oleh Dr. Muhammad Dimyati. Jadi Indonesia sekarang sudah fokus kepada berbagai bidang untuk meningkatkan pembangunan manusia dan lingkungan itu sendiri. Dan juga ditambahkan oleh Prof. Hari, jadi untuk junior geographer, nah gitu kira-kira ya. Jadi yang penting itu kita jangan fokus saja kepada visi dan misi, tetapi bagaimana implementasi kita dalam proses Sustainable Development Goals itu sendiri. Oke, kita cukupkan untuk pertanyaan. So we close our question because we have a limited time for that. Then we thank you for the keynote speakers. Okay, big applause for all. Okay, I close this presentation. See you on another occasion. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I give it back to MC.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, everyone. Nice to meet you all, everyone.
Thank you, Prof. Hari. Thank you, Prof. Tim. Thank you, everyone.
Halo, cek satu. Baik, ayo. Ini rekan saya. Kita berikutnya, Bapak Ibu hadirin yang kami hormati, demikian penampilan dari presentasi dari keynote speaker. Nah, mohon perhatian sejenak semua partisipan, karena saatnya kami mengumumkan pembagian sesi ruangan untuk presentasi presentasi paralel. Baik. Mohon disimak. Oke. Di sini bahasa Inggris ya, kita bacakan bahasa Inggrisnya. Untuk room 1, room 1, hazard and risk land degradation and desertification, water sustainability, geographical information system and remote sensing. Yang akan menjadi moderator adalah Ibu Elvi Zuriani MSI. Berikut nama presenter dari kelompok 1, room 1, ada Bapak Ramdan, Afrian, Zukiarona Islami, Muhammad Aris Marfai, Diah Rahmawati, Hizbaron Ayu Suciani, dengan tema Smong Ibiuna and Goloro as Oral Cultural Heritage for Earthquake and Tsunami Disaster Mitigation. Kemudian ada Muhammad Alfi, Warsa Sugandi, Mirna Yunita, Zairin, Edward, Gebi Rianti Utami, dengan judul paper Knowledge and Values of Local Wisdom of the Nagari Sungai Buloh Community in Padang Pariaman Regency in Disaster Mitigation. The next one is Zefri Susi Asiatin Kis Yoga Utomo, dengan judul makalah Integration of Spatial Data with Land Using Geographical Information System, Case Study in Ministry National Land Agency. Berikut, ya, nanti Muhammad Dendi Arianto, Study of Spring Discharge Response due to Rainfall and Characterization of Sunglon Spring Karst Aquifer for Direction of Water Resources Utilization of and Management. Kemudian ada Ibu Erna Juwita, Bapak Dasrizal, Edo Satrio Wahyudi, Heru Kartika Sandra, dengan tema Settlement Area Development Model in Bandang Flood Program Areas in Suliti Watershed Province of West Sumatra. Ada Bapak Afrital Rizky, Arizela dan tim, Spatial Analysis Business Feasibility for Geosite Mount Talang Tourism Area, and Arizela Putra Ulni, Bapak Dasrizal, Bapak Afrital dan tim, Special Patterns of Land Use in Nagari Sungai Durian, Patamuan Subdistrict. Baik, sebelumnya kita umumkan sertifikatnya Putri. For the keynote speakers, the committee will send the certificate of appreciation as the keynote speaker, and we will send you through email later on. Thank you so much. Untuk room 2, ada Ratna Willis dengan tema Development of Balai Gadang Village, Koto Tangah Subdistrict Padang City, to become a landslide disaster resilient village. Listio Yuda Irawan, Muhammad Faiz Mustafa dan teman-teman dan tim dengan tema Mapping Tourism Potential Using Physical Parameters on Beach Tourism Object in Gajah Rejo Village, Malang Regency, East Java. Ini jauh sekali nih ya, dari Jawa Timur. Baik, next. Mita Rosaliza, Gumilar Rusliwa Mosantri, dengan makalah Mangrove Forest versus Welfare of the Kit Tribe in Bengkalis from Strategic Action Fields Perspective. Ada Ibu Mirna Yunita, Ibu Anisyah Dwi Fitri dan teman-teman dengan judul makalah Strategies to Improve Economic Resilience of Traditional Fishing Family in Lubuk Tanjung Village, Air Napal District, Bengkulu Utara Regency. Berikut ada Osronita, Bapak Hari Febrianto, Bapak Beri Adam Yose, Ibu Beri Adam atau Bapak Adam ini, dengan judul Identification of Karst Ecosystem Potential of Nagari Simaraso, Baso District, Agam Regency as support for the Sianok Maninjau Geopark West Sumatra. Berikut ada Ibu Zulfa, Bamar, Bapak Kaksim, Bapak Juliandri dan teman-teman. The value of local wisdom of the monotonan dalam people in Seberut Forest Management Mentawai Island Regency. Dan terakhir ada Ibu Rika Despica, Ibu Elvi Zuriani dan teman-teman. Development of information on marine tourism areas in Padang City based on web geographic information system. Dan akan di moderator nantinya adalah Ibu Rika Despica, SPD MSI. Untuk room 3, mohon yang masih berada di Zoom meeting disimak pembagiannya sebagai berikut. Berikut nanti akan dipandu oleh Ibu Dr. Nevilinda SEMSI dan para presenternya adalah sebagai berikut. Rendra Zainal Maliki, Development of Model Project-Based Learning, Based Mind Mapping on Geographic Materials of Class 10, SMA Palu City, Palu dari Sulawesi Tengah. Wow, fantastic, banyak partisipannya ibu-ibu ya. Berikut ada Yandri Momon Datuk Tanamir, Bapak Momon, ada dengan tema Diagnosis and Efforts to Overcome Students' Learning Difficulties During the Pandemic. Ada Ibu Trisna Febriani, Bapak Das Izal dan teman-teman, Social Studies Learning Based on Geographic Literature in Growing Character, Care for the Environment of Students at SMP Negeri City of Padang. Ya, berikut ada Bapak Slamet Rianto, Ibu Nila Afriansyah dengan tim dengan tema Students Level of Literature in Geography Learning at SMA 1 Pasaman. Next, Bapak Muhammad Datuk Tanamir, Ibu Nevilinda and team with the title Implementation of Environmental Education through the Adiwiyata School Program in the Formation of Pro-Environment Students' Behavior. The next one is Robi Sugara, Ibu Rozana Eka Putri dan Ibu Loli Setriani dengan judul Development of Tune Video Media as Learning Complementary for Geography Subject at Madrasah Aliyah Kiai Haji Ahmad Dahlan Teluk Kuantan, Provinsi Riau. Berikut ada Tia Susriani, Bapak Slamet Rianto dan Ibu Loli Setriani, The Effectiveness of Online-Based Interactive Learning Model in Geography, Subject Class 11, SMA 1, Payung Sekaki, Solo Regency. Nah, sudah? We don't have to.
Udah.
Oke, tidak kita. Selanjutnya bergabung di room 1, 2, atau 3.
Oke, baik. Nama-nama Bapak Ibu dan peserta yang belum disebutkan nanti bergabung di room 1, 2, dan 3. Itu ya Bu ya? Baik, terima kasih.
Thank you. Partisipan semuanya nanti bergabung lagi di Zoom jam 13.30 untuk sesi paralel presentasi masing-masing pemakalah. Terima kasih, kita kembali di jam 13.30 dengan link Zoom yang sama.
Ya,
Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.